Today I will tell the story of a subscriber about a paranormal night shift at a gas station. After I read it, I could not sleep normally. I took the night shift at Harper's Gas and Go because it paid a little extra, and I liked the quiet. The store sat on the outskirts of town, right before the highway faded into nothing but open road and trees. Most nights, I only had to deal with truckers, drunks, and the occasional lost traveler. It was easy money, until last night. I clocked in at 10 p.m., like usual, and relieved Dave, the guy who worked the evening shift. He was already halfway out the door before I even put my bag down. "Weirdos are out tonight," he muttered before disappearing into the dark. The first few hours were dead. I cleaned the coffee station, restocked the cigarette display, and counted down the register. Just a regular night. Then, at around 2:45 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. I looked up from my phone, expecting some bleary-eyed traveler. Instead, I saw a man standing just inside the door, soaked to the bone. His clothes clung to him, dark and dripping. He was barefoot, his skin pale and wrinkled like he'd been in the water too long. But the thing that really made my stomach twist? He wasn't breathing. Not like I could see his chest still or anything dramatic like that, but his mouth hung open, and his lips were this awful blue-gray color. His eyes, dull and glassy, stared past me. "Sir?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. He took a single step forward. A wet slap echoed as his bare foot hit the tile. The smell hit me then. Stagnant water and something rotten underneath. I felt a prickle of fear crawl up my neck. Something was very, very wrong. Then he opened his mouth wider, as if to say something, and a trickle of black water spilled down his chin. I froze. The store was silent except for the hum of the coolers and the soft drip, drip, drip of water pooling beneath him. The man's mouth stayed open, his lips twitching like he was trying to form words. But nothing came out. Just more of that inky, black water dribbling down his chin, soaking into his already wet shirt. I took a slow step back toward the counter. "Sir, do you need help?" He took another step forward. His foot landed wrong, twisted at an unnatural angle, but he didn't react. No pain, no flinch, nothing. He just kept coming. My breath caught in my throat as he raised a shaking hand, palm up, like he was reaching for something. For me. That's when the overhead lights flickered. A quick buzz, a stutter, and then darkness. The emergency lights kicked in a second later, casting long, eerie shadows across the aisles. But the man, he was gone. The only thing left was a puddle of black water where he had been standing. I swear to God, my heart stopped. I snatched the store phone off the wall and punched in 911, my fingers clumsy, shaking. The dial tone rang once. Then, a wet, gurgling sound crackled through the receiver, like someone drowning. I slammed the phone down. My hands were clammy, my shirt sticking to my back with sweat. I turned, moving toward the front doors. Screw this. I was leaving, but as I stepped out from behind the counter, something heavy hit the glass outside. A loud, wet thump. I whipped around, and that's when I saw it. The body, pressed against the front doors. A woman, pale, soaked, her dark hair plastered to her face. Her eyes were wide and lifeless, her lips parted in a silent scream. Water streamed from her open mouth, bubbling against the glass. Then, her hand twitched. I stumbled back so fast I nearly tripped over the rug. The woman's hand, pale and wrinkled, dragged down the glass. It left a wet smear as her fingers twitched, convulsed. Her mouth stayed open, dark water spilling from her lips in slow, sick gurgles. Her eyes, God, those eyes, they weren't just dead. They were wrong. Too wide, too glassy, like something was inside her, forcing them open. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed, watching. Then her body lurched, not like a person trying to move, but like something inside her had jerked the strings. That snapped me out of it. I scrambled behind the counter and grabbed the store phone again. I didn't care about the noises this time. I just hit 911 and pressed the receiver to my ear. Silence. Then, help! The voice on the other end was hoarse, wet, barely a whisper. like someone choking on water. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. A long pause. Then, in that same gurgling rasp, "Let me in." My stomach dropped. Slowly, I lowered the phone and looked back at the glass doors. The woman was gone, but the water remained. The ground outside was soaked, dark puddles spreading out in all directions, as if something had crawled its way toward the store. Then, from the aisles behind me, a single wet footprint. I wasn't alone anymore. The sound of that wet footprint echoed in my skull. I turned slowly, my breath locked in my chest. The aisles stretched before me, dim under the flickering emergency lights. Something was here. I reached under the counter and grabbed the only thing that felt remotely like a weapon, a metal flashlight. My hands were slick with sweat as I gripped it tight. Then I heard it, faint dripping sound. Somewhere between the shelves, water was falling, slow, deliberate, like something was moving and leaving a trail behind. I forced myself forward, one shaky step at a time. As I reached the end of the aisle, I saw it, a single wet footprint, then another, leading toward the storage room in the back. The door was slightly open, and from inside, I heard breathing. Not normal breathing. It was ragged, uneven, like lungs full of water, struggling to work. I swallowed hard. My gut screamed at me to run, to get the hell out, but my body wasn't listening. Instead, I reached out with a trembling hand and pushed the storage room door open wider. The smell hit me first. Rot, stagnant water, death, then a shape in the corner, hunched, dripping, facing the wall. Couldn't breathe. The figure twitched, shoulders rising and falling in that awful, wet, choking breath. Then, in a sickening, jerky motion, it snapped its head toward me. The face was all wrong. Swollen, bloated, eyes wide, bulging, skin a sickly gray blue, peeling at the edges. And when its mouth opened, black water spilled onto the floor. I barely had time to react before it lurched forward. It lunged. I barely had time to move before it came at me. Its wet, bloated body slamming against the storage room door. I stumbled back, the flashlight slipping from my grip, clattering onto the tile. That thing dragged itself toward me, limbs jerking like a marionette with cut strings. Its mouth hung open, spilling black water with every shuddering breath. I turned and ran. I don't even remember deciding to. My body just moved. My feet skidded on the damp floor as I bolted past the aisles, straight for the front door. Locked, my heart slammed in my chest. I yanked at the handle, cursing myself. I had locked it earlier, just out of habit. The keys were in my pocket, but my hands were shaking too hard to get them out. Then, from behind me, a wet, slapping footstep. I spun around. The storage room door stood wide open, but the thing? It wasn't there. My breath came in sharp gasps. I scanned the aisles, my ears straining against the electric hum of the lights. Then I heard it, a faint drip. Above me, I looked up and saw a pale, bloated hand gripping the edge of the ceiling tiles. Something was crawling through the vents. A sickening, wet creak sounded as the metal above me buckled. Then, the tiles collapsed, and the body fell. It hit the floor with a sickening, wet thud. I scrambled backward, my breath strangled in my throat. The body twitched, limbs bending at angles that weren't natural. Water pooled around it, soaking into the cheap tile. Then, it moved. Not like a person getting up. More like something inside it was shifting, pushing, stretching. Its head snapped toward me, its jaw unhinged. A choked, gurgling noise slithered from its throat, black water bubbling past its lips. Its hands, wrinkled, swollen, dug into the floor as it began to pull itself forward. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran, straight for the back exit. My sneakers squeaked against the wet floor as I threw myself at the door, hands shaking as I fumbled for the push bar. It gave way, and I burst outside into the cold night air. For one horrible second, I thought I was safe. Then I heard it, the sound of water splashing behind me. I turned. The thing was dragging itself out of the store, its eyes wide, doll-like, staring straight through me. locked on mine. And then it spoke. A single broken, drowning word. Help! I turned and ran into the dark. I ran. I didn't think, didn't look back. Just sprinted into the night, my breath tearing from my lungs in ragged gasps. The gas station's flickering lights faded behind me, swallowed by the dark stretch of road. But I could still hear it. The wet slap of bare feet against pavement. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The thing was following me, not running, pulling itself forward, its bloated limbs moving with sickening jerks. Black water spilled from its gaping mouth, leaving a dark, glistening trail in its wake. I ran faster. Up ahead, the road stretched toward the highway. If I could just reach it, flag down a car. Then my foot hit something. Puddle. My ankle twisted, and I went down hard. My palms scraped against the asphalt as I landed, pain flashing up my arms. I gasped, scrambling to get back up. A hand clamped around my ankle. As cold, wrinkled, strong. I screamed, kicking wildly. My heel connected with something soft and wet, and the grip loosened. I yanked my leg free and twisted around. It was right there, face inches from mine. The skin sagged, peeling away in strips. Its eyes, black, empty voids, locked onto me. Water dripped from its mouth, splashing against my jeans. It reached for me again. I did the only thing I could. I grabbed a loose rock from the ground and swung. The impact sent a wet, crunching sound through the air. The thing jerked back, a sickening gurgle escaping its throat. I didn't wait to see if it would recover. I bolted toward the highway, and that's when I saw the headlights. A car. A way out. The car was coming fast. Headlights cut through the dark, reflecting off the wet pavement. I stumbled into the road, waving my arms frantically. Stop! Please! I screamed, my voice hoarse. The driver slammed on the brakes. Tires screeched. The car skidded to a stop just feet away from me. The door flew open and a man, mid-40s, heavyset, wearing a trucker cap, jumped out. Jesus Christ, kid, what the hell are you? Then he saw it. I didn't have to turn around to know. I could hear the wet, shuffling sound, the gurgling breath. The driver's face went pale. The hell is that? He muttered, taking a step back. Please, I gasped. Just drive. Get us out of here. He didn't need to be told twice. We both dove for the car. I barely got the door shut before he threw it into reverse, tires spinning against the slick road. The headlights swept over the thing as it lurched forward. His face twisted. It opened its mouth wider than humanly possible. And then, the lights flickered. For a split second, everything went dark. And when they flashed back on, it was gone. Just gone. The driver's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. Did you see where it went? I shook my head, chest heaving. Only the wet road remained. No footprints. No water. But something told me it wasn't over. I turned back toward the gas station in the distance. Its flickering neon sign, the empty parking lot. The store stood silent. And then, as we pulled away, the lights inside the gas station went out. The gas station disappeared into the night as we sped down the highway. My heart was still slamming against my ribs, my skin cold with sweat. The driver kept glancing at me. You want to tell me what the hell just happened back there? I swallowed hard. I don't know, I admitted. It just showed up. I thought it was a guy at first, then the body, and then I stopped. My throat tightened. I didn't want to say it out loud. Didn't want to admit what I had seen. The driver sighed, rubbing his face with one hand. Shit, man. He shook his head. You on something? I snapped my gaze to him. Are you serious? Look, I ain't saying I didn't see it too, but, he exhaled sharply. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. No cops, no cameras. Just some kid in a gas station claiming a corpse walked up to him. I clenched my fists. I'm not making this up. He sighed. I ain't saying you are. His fingers tapped against the wheel. Where you want to go? You got a house or something? I didn't. My apartment was a couple towns over. But something told me I couldn't go home yet. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. A slow, creeping sensation in the back of my skull, like I was being watched. Then I noticed something. The smell. That horrible, stagnant, rotting scent. It was inside the car. I turned, slowly, my fingers tightening against the seat. The back seat was dark. Just a pile of junk, an old jacket, some crumpled fast food bags. Nothing else. But then, a wet, quiet drip from somewhere beneath the seat. And then, something moved. I barely had time to scream. The thing lurched out from under the seat. A pale, bloated hand shot forward, fingers curling around my ankle. It's cold, wrinkled, soaking wet. I screamed, thrashing, my knees slamming into the dashboard. The driver swerved, shouting, "What the hell?" Then he saw it. The thing crawling up between the seats. Its body was twisted, broken, leaking black water. Its swollen face barely looked human anymore. Wide, glassy eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. It opened its mouth. Black water poured out, bubbling over the seats, splashing against my legs. I kicked as hard as I could. My foot connected with its chest. It felt soft, rotten, like wet paper. The thing reeled back, hissing, but it didn't let go. The driver slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt. My head snapped forward. My seatbelt the only thing keeping me from flying through the windshield. The thing wasn't so lucky. The sudden stop flung it forward, sending it crashing into the dashboard. A horrible, wet crunch filled the car. The driver and I sat frozen, panting. Then, the thing twitched. Its head turned slow, unnatural. Its jaw hung loose, unhinged, crawled forward. That was it. I threw open the door and ran. I barely registered the driver doing the same. We didn't stop until we were nearly 100 yards away, standing in the middle of the empty road, gasping for breath. The car sat still, idling in the night. The open doors swung slightly in the wind, and in the back seat, it was gone. Only a dark, wet stain remained. The driver turned to me, his face pale, drenched in sweat. He swallowed. "We ain't talking about this. Ever." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "We never found the body. I never went back to the gas station. But sometimes, I still smell the water. And when I do, I know it's watching, waiting, for me to let my guard down, for me to let it in, again."